this was announced just, roughly a couple days ago. Alchemy Pay. We are proud to partner with Ripple to power fiat on-ramps for RLUSD, fully backed compliant stablecoin. Now available through your favorite local payment methods. Alchemy Pay makes it accessible to 173 countries. Compliance, trust, liquidity, of course, all delivered. Now, you may be thinking, like, what in the world does this have to do with Jasmy? I mean, this is just strictly like Ripple. I swear we're going to get to that. But if anything, like blockchain, it needs to flow. It needs to connect. Bear with me. If you go over to this part from ramp.alchemypay, you see with Alchemy Pay, the whole thing of the bottom stating Visa, MasterCard, Apple Pay, Google Pay, and all that, of course, powered by Alchemy Pay. But the whole idea of buying crypto and receiving XRP, especially with their platform. All right. Next part we're going to jump into is this. And in this, it's the news briefing. Alchemy Pay partners, of course, with Ripple, enable seamless on-ramp with Ripple USD, RLUSD. Okay. One thing I decided to get into when I saw some of this was, again, some of this terminology. And it's this part right here. Alchemy Pay is a pioneer in fiat crypto payments, not only offering extensive global coverage and deep expertise, but also navigating regulatory environments. Makes it the partner of choice for Web3 projects seeking scale, adoption, enhanced accessibility. 2024 alone, it recorded 3 million registered users, 8 million transactions, and 3 times the growth. Regulatory approvals, by the way, UK, Switzerland, United States, Canada, where Robb's at, Australia, South Korea. I mean, you get the gist, okay? The thing I want to jump down to is where it says on and off ramp inquiries. Developers of Web3 platforms and dApps with interest in integrating Alchemy Pay's ramp solution can contact, of course, them. So this platform is, in my opinion, one of the most supreme ones for bringing in a huge registered base of people. That's big for not just Ripple, but it's big for something like, obviously, Jasmy. Now, some people say that this is speculative. I will literally show you some quote-unquote receipts of why this matters to you.
If managing your crypto feels like solving a puzzle, it's time to switch to Decent Wallet. So just a few taps, you can manage, track, and secure your crypto with unmatched ease. And here's the best part. Grab your Decent Wallet at a discounted price by using the referral link below. Don't miss out on making your crypto experience smoother and more secure.
As I pull up more about this, I want to share this next particular part. And again, I think this is really, really interesting and eye-opening, to say the least. So for me, I'll come back into I guess I won't come back into the frame. I'll just share some key things with you. So one thing I want to gather for you guys is the significance of the Alchemy Pay and, of course, Ripple partnership. Just on a simple Grok search, it's the whole idea of 173 countries, 300 payment methods, okay? Strengthening Ripple's ecosystem, we get that. Bridging traditional, TradeFi, of course, to hopefully DeFi. But the other part I want to get into is this whole thing of the implications for us as in Ripple XRP holders. It means that higher usage of the ledger may positively impact XRP's value. XRP is often used for transaction fees, liquidity, provision. We know that. But again, with this increase the price, so many times people are asking, like, will we see price be increased? My key takeaway is I think it's a no-brainer, but what I want to show you here is some of the just brief caveats, okay? So in summary, it says Alchemy Pay Ripple partnership enhances RLUSD accessibility, strengthens, of course, the XRP ecosystem. So At the end of the day, retail XRP holders may see long-term value growth, but they should stay informed, right? Well, I'm informing you now. The next part I want to jump into is the whole thing of not so much about who is Alchemy Pay, but what I want to share with you is this whole thing of their payment channels, okay? So you see so many listed here: Visa, MasterCard, Discover, again, a lot of big companies. SEPA, I cover that quite a few times. Area of emphasis actually will be, for example, what you see here in regard to like Hong Kong, so on and so forth. Line Pay, some people in our community with Jasmy have pointed out the whole thing with Line. All right, so again, these are things that I don't think you should dismiss. The other thing I want to get into is partners. They have some real key partners. A lot of you guys already know about Shopify, so on and so forth, right? The other thing I want to get into is the on and off ramps, quite a few. Heck, I mean, I even promote BTCC. They're even on there, right? So interesting to see this on another outline, not here. I'll show you how all or most of these obviously have quant integration. But this part was really, really eye-opening for me. This might be your aha moment. There's this company, it's called Prequin. And Prequin is one of the ones that's listed over at Alchemy Pay. In fact, I don't necessarily have the exact one, but if you go through the catalog, there's a mention about this, okay? It might take me a bit to dig that up. What's significant about it is Prequin is part of BlackRock. Okay, so common ground here, dApps platform. Interesting to see this. And what's even more interesting is, like it says, dApps Platform Inc. overview, and it goes on mentioning in some of these key things. One of the things I want to mention to you guys is how they were first established. Back in 2017, and of course, what you also see here, current investors, Binance Asia. All right, so where do we go from here? Well, from what I gathered, I did a Google search and I decided to type in Prequin XRP. Now, this part, Rob, is extremely interesting. We know that Google has ways of archiving what is considered cache data. I don't know if you've ever done this before, you're trying to look up something. You can, on the right side, typically speaking, you used to be able to go to this three dots and then click on where it says, for example, what's cached, without going to like a Wayback Time machine. So just to show you what's on the surface, it says Ripple Labs Inc. Asset Profile. RippleNet is a blockchain technology for global payments that aid financial institutions, yada, yada. They highlight Ripple a lot on Prequin. The other area they highlight is, again on a search, Arrington Capital Hedge Fund Manager Profile. Again, highlighting the whole thing of the firm focusing on investments, digital assets, XRP. This other one, Prequin Pro, the whole idea of alternative asset class activity across institutional investors, portfolios. But bottom line is a lot of this connection, not only to XRP, but of course, obviously to your BlackRock, okay? Here's where I'm going to go with this. When I pulled up the whole thing of obviously Arrington Capital, some of you guys know about Arrington Capital, back in 2018, they have what is referred to as Arrington Capital Advisory Board. And on this one, the text gets a little smudged. If you don't mind full screen, I would appreciate it, because otherwise it just kind of affects my outline. So what I want to point out here for you guys is, again, where you're going to see the common ground of something like this and something like Jasmy, obviously. Again, trying to establish this connection for you guys. So we're not oblivious to the whole thing necessarily of XRP and Arrington Capital. But what I want to point out to you guys is some of these people, okay? So this person, founder, Reusuable Show, data scientist. She previously worked at HSBC. And basically speaking, Reusuable founded Asian Crypto Girl Power, group of influential female entrepreneurs and so on. Keep in mind, this lady founded Hyperledger London, largest hyperledger community in the world. We know that Jasmy is under the Hyperledger fabric, if you will, as pointed out by Hara and other key people over at Jasmy. Okay, well, is that all I have? No, of course I wouldn't do that to you guys. I think that would be a little ridiculous. The other thing I want to jump into is this part where it says on May 11th, 2018, Arrington Capital does this thing of going to Asia. Again, why point this out? It's establishing a footprint here. So back in 2017, they had this fund, right? Early startup funds, if you will, doing a lot of business in Asia. As we know with Jasmy, they're also doing a lot of business in Asia. You may not think they're doing a lot of business in Asia, but they're doing a lot of business in Asia. They got this thing here, says the World Digital Asset Summit. It was in Singapore, FBG Capital. They went to Hong Kong to meet a community there. Again, a lot of common ground here, okay? But again, I get it. This is Arrington Capital, all right? So you see about, the whole thing of Huobi. You see this lovely lady from Proppy. But whatever the case be, explosion of entrepreneurship in Asia, at least then. And I would agree still now. The only area that I was able to pull up from Prequin that would mention specifically Ripple Labs is this. It's kind of somewhat archived. If you want more, it's kind of like Robb and his Patreon. Shout out to Robb. You got to get that subscriber access, right? So Ripple Labs talks about you viewing this profile, right? You got to get a request. But even on the surface, I thought it was interesting to see that this is the one and only one that they failed to scrub. And yes, I'm stating it. They scrubbed a lot of information from Prequin. Okay, they really, really did. Goes on to highlight some of these things that they forgot to scrub. Goes on to highlight some of the common ground, obviously, to when we mentioned Jasmy, like SBI Holdings and so on. And the other thing I want to mention is Standard Chartered Bank and so on. But whatever the case be, it's the deals, all right? And of course, like it says, MoneyGram International, so on and so forth. But here's the bottom part that's really the smoking gun for me. The smoking gun for all of us should be this bottom area that mentions the chairman president of Rosetta Stone, Japan, at least at that time. Now, of course, this is written in Japanese, but this, and again, there might be a couple people already studied this. This is, in my opinion, the absolute smoking gun. It's this person. In the interpretation, it's Noriyuki Matsuda. Now, according to Crunchbase, this gentleman is part of a primary organization, which is referred to as Sourcenext. Now, he's the founder and CEO, but the location that he's at is basically Palo Alto, and again, the San Francisco Bay Area. But Noriyuki Matsuda is the founder and CEO of Sourcenext Corporation. Okay? Keep in mind, this gentleman studied over at Osaka Prefecture University. We know about the common ground of Osaka Prefecture, especially with some key people with Jasmy. I'm not going to get into the deep dive so much about that today, but you're more than welcome to take a look into it. And do you see where we're going with this? You should, because as you see here, Sourcenext is a software development company that offers what? Mobile apps, IoT devices, retail, and AI translators. This is all up Jasmy's alley and even Janction. Okay? So where do we go from here, and what do I have? Well, as of what you see here back in February 2021, again, interesting to see the Crunchbank rankings about the total amount of revenue that they kind of bring in. And it's more to it than just that. But again, Internet of Things companies with more than 50 million in revenue, Internet of Things companies with less than 500 million in revenue, but companies, mobile app companies. And again, you kind of see a common thing here. Now, again, is this all I have? It really isn't. The other part I want to jump into is this. If you go to sourcenext.com, you're going to see some real eye-opening things. And of course, I interpret this from Japanese to English. What's important here is for you to see, I guess, some of the ones mentioned on the screen. Sourcenext site offers carefully selected products, services such as IoT, and software from Japan and abroad. And of course, it's some of their new products. Now, on the part with the new products, what was interesting to me was this Eris Trinity Cat as of the release date of June 5th. That's literally early this month. And of course, again, the tied to Internet of Things. And again, where we go with some of this, because constant references to some of these things. And again, even on the tags, you see, for example, office business, backup data and recovery, IoT devices, as pointed out here. All right. Well, hopefully it got you. And since I do, we're going to jump into this next part. I said we'll kick it over to Rob here in a bit. Rob, after I read this, I want you to inject, and then we'll kind of take a brief pause and show the rest of this. On a simple Google search, if you were to look up Sourcenext Corporation, Jasmy, well, it's not speculative. Sourcenext Corporation and Jasmy Corporation have indeed have a connection, and it stems from a business alliance between Sourcenext and Sourcom. Sourcom, a company focused on democratizing the Internet of Things, has in fact a partnership with Jasmy. Again, if this doesn't catch your attention, nothing really will. Perhaps through shared goals or initiatives related to the IoT and data managing space. And of course, gives the background about this. Don't want to do so much on Jasmy because we know about Jasmy, but it's Sourcenext involvement. Like it says, Sourcenext Corporation's company involved in distributing software applications, and they do in fact include what? PC optimization, maintenance, data recovery, and more. Is this Jasmy's true plug towards mass adoption? Think about everything that we have here. Their alliance with Sourcom, a Jasmy partner, indicates a potential role in facilitating, adoption and integration of Jasmy's data management solutions. In essence, Sourcenext connection with Jasmy seems to be through their shared partner Sourcom, focusing on democratization and IoT. That's a big deal. Now, of course, we're going to kick it over to what NeoX Tricks has here in a bit. But Rob, I'm going to show you guys and the community how this is a very, very big deal moving forward, and people simply have never connected it, never realized it, or if anything, might not even be aware that this exists. Take it away.
Yeah, the ties. It's just watching you go into these ties and these connections it's mind blowing to me that I see so much of a misunderstanding when it comes to Jasmy, the roots, what's going on beneath the surface. It's the cliche picture of the iceberg, right? And what you see and what's actually going on here, kind of thing. And I believe that with Jasmy in particular, the people who are paying attention to this stuff, listening to people like you, myself, Rue, Jesse, all of these other people are gonna get it, and then you're gonna have a lot of people who are just gonna miss this, and like let's say in the next cycle, for example, and this is just seemingly going to have come out of nowhere for a lot of people, because and this is the importance, what I would say with it, especially with a company like Jasmy, why you guys have to pay attention to what's going on as much as you can behind the scenes, right? Because if the average retail investor jumping into crypto that hears Jasmy, they hear Jasmy scam, and what do, right? It's not interested, right? Orange logo, blah blah blah, whatever. And I truly believe that this company is going to just take a lot of people by surprise. It seemingly will have come out of nowhere. Meanwhile, people like us will be sitting there going, we've been telling you this, guys. When mass adoption just clicks like that, like they say, flip the switch with XRP, and people are not going to know what happened. Right?
No, and we've seen this example happen before. Jasmy gets extremely quiet. The last, I want to say, 3 times they gotten extremely quiet. Then those are some of the biggest pumps we've seen in recent history with the project. My attitude is, again, people wonder why. Like the whole thing of the talk of semiconductors and whatnot. People are like, Jasmy has no ties to that. But when we got the biggest news ever about what was happening, not only in Taiwan, but of course Hong Kong, and then the deals from Hong Kong, of course, to Japan, again, the price went crazy. And people are like, why? This doesn't make any sense. Keep in mind this. There's a lot of things that don't make sense. NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, might not make sense to you. But at the end of the day, we're invested into utility for a reason. It may seem as though it's all speculative utility until it's not.
I would throw into there and reiterate that the My Number card goes live in the Apple iPhones in 3 days.
Yeah, that's something else. Something I want to point out here is the whole concept of this thing of Sourcenext, Sourcom, and of course Jasmy. So earlier we were just talking about the whole thing of obviously some of this about Sourcenext and Sourcom. The only other guy I found other than NeoX Tricks to talk about this was our brother in space, Lil Bidman. But let's highlight Neo. Neo is awesome, good friend, right? Great member of the community. He says the vision of democratizing IoT, according to Ken Tamagawa, CEO of Sourcom in Japan, is focused on innovation and accessibility of IoT technologies for businesses of all sizes. The connections with Jasmy are facilitated by Sourcenext, co-investor and partner of Sourcom. Now, just in case you're just in the chat doing your thing, I get it. Nothing like giving dabs to your brothers and sisters, right? I get it, especially on Saturday night. Please understand why I'm highlighting this. Because clearly we see here an established paper trail connection when it comes to Jasmy and obviously these connections, especially with Ripple. So co-investor and partner Sourcom, that's huge. So of which Kumitake Ando is an outside director, chairman, of course, of Jasmy. And, Ando-san is, he's the senior member, right? But Aplex also mentioned in a statement partnership program with Sourcom regarding technological business plans with Jasmy. So if anything, if you've been watching from the beginning, you now see how it somewhat comes together, but not completely. For reference, Sourcom is a connectivity platform and service provider that enables businesses to connect and, of course, manage their IoT devices global. Here's some of the main investors: World Innovation Lab, cross-border American-Japanese venture capital company. Who's looking to do the whole thing also with American-Japanese venture capital companies? Right, Jasmy's looking to do a lot of that, especially with Janction. Nippon Gas Company Limited. Got to be careful with that. Don't want to say that the wrong way. Sourcenext Corporation, a Japanese technology company. Hitachi, Secom Co., Japanese security company. And of course, obviously, what? Sony Group Corporation. As we get further into this, again, shout out to Jesse, KR Finance. Shout out to Little Bidman. Now, back in March of 2024, this guy named B Rich says he feels as though a big partnership will be Intel. I'm telling you flat out, we've been there and done that with Intel, but who will be the big one? Not in 2024, because we're out of 2024. Who's the big one still yet with 6 months remaining, roughly, give or take, here in 2025? And basically speaking, well, Lil Bidman says it's kind of hard to say. He feels as though, Intel, Reusuable, but he mentions, think about this, Lil Bidman, one of the best Jasmy researchers out there, he did highlight Sourcenext. So for me and you and everybody else, do you not see how this is coming into fruition? You should. If you've been paying attention, you totally should. So he agrees Intel is a top candidate, but in reality, Intel has supported Jasmy's cause since day one. And again, sometimes you need to be reminded about this. So many occasions they have cooperated, and again, the whole thing with Jasmy, Intel Japan, so on and so forth. Because at the end of the day, back then, Jasmy plus Intel, Reusuable, talk about the future of the Internet of Things, distributed management, and of course of systems. Now check this out. Back to the whole topic of what we were talking about earlier about BlackRock and especially this company, and I'll jump back to it for a second, Prequin. Again, why point this out? Because it's the dApps platform, ladies and gentlemen. Prequin is part of BlackRock. And of course, as we get further into the next part of the outline, jumping back to something somewhat, I should say somewhat recent, but this time last year. Think about this. BlackRock's portfolio management software, Aladdin, is complemented by data and research tools from who? Robb? Prequin. $3.22 billion. As I would always mention in my videos, boil it, mash it, stick it in a stew. Why? Because, again, the acquisition, ladies and gentlemen, that's where it's at. It allows the world's largest asset management company to integrate Prequin's data and research tools within its portfolio management software, Aladdin's complementary workflow capabilities to establish a unified platform. Now, why is that such a big deal? Well, for one, shout out to Chad Steingraber, great member of the XRP Army, great research, right? He points out, just poking around, BlackRock has 541 known crypto wallets. Aladdin is in the crypto market and you don't even know it. Is that true, though? Well, I want to jump into it. And here's, of course, that little diagram. I wish I could zoom in more. It's a little smudged and blurry. But people feel as though, yeah, of course, BlackRock connects to everything because they're in roughly, $10 trillion worth of assets under custody. And, again, I'm not a fan of BlackRock. That's not the point. But again, I want you guys to understand that when people ask this question, like what kind of assets, and Chad Steingraber says basically a lot of different ones. Well, who are some of those different ones? All right. So as I zoomed in on this, it's the whole thing with some of these hot wallets and so on. And I do apologize, a little blurry, again, taken from his cell phone. Here's the point. If you go to Arkham points out BlackRock USD Institutional Digital Liquidity BIDL Fund, of course, on Arkham. And it's this account called 0x13E that received 100 million USDC. It says last week, at least at that time, is indeed BlackRock's. Yes, is indeed BlackRock's. This account is linked to securitized deployer accounts as well as participating in test transactions with a contract representing the tokenized security BIDL. Now, of course, that was back in March of 2024. But again, just in case you're not aware of it, look at these valuations. Because in these valuations, you see, plain as day, and I'll zoom in a little bit more. What do you see? $100 million worth of USDC. Now, that is important, and that is worth pointing out, because what have we also seen lately when it comes to Ripple and USDC? Now, they didn't land USDC, but they could. Jump into the next part. This is from intel.arkham.com, Explorer Entity BlackRock. In this, you see what is 369, so $73.2 billion from BlackRock. And basically speaking, you see some interesting things here. Of course, BTC is going to be the largest holding. Well, no kidding. But the other part I want to jump into is what you're going to see here on the other particular page. On the other particular page, let's pull this up. Arrington XRP Capital. This is how things come full circle. No pun intended. From Arrington Capital, 28 million, right? And what you see here is a day ago, very interesting to see what they're trying to do in regard to specifically like USDC, and also what you're going to see here in a moment as I pull it up, some of these other key things. So let's go ahead and show you what I'm talking about. And right here, Circle 3 days ago, hot wallet, 10 million worth of USDC. Now, are they strategically trying to do something, preparing for something big? I think the answer is yes. And of course, from what we shared at the beginning, and if you're just connecting, this is flying right past your head, and I get it. You're going to have to catch up on it. Now, here's another thing I think is really, really interesting. In recent news, Honda has been brought up quite a bit. Okay, so I want to point out this gentleman. It's Michael Arrington. Why point him out? Because we're talking a lot about Arrington Capital, especially with XRP, right? So Arrington XRP Capital, right? So literally you have Michael Arrington. He's the founder of TechCrunch, Crunchbase, and Arrington Capital. Remember how we highlighted the gentleman at the beginning from Crunchbase? I don't know if you guys remember that. So just in case if you don't, reminder of Noriyuki Matsuda. And again, think about it, Sourcenext. Think about the whole thing of mobile apps, IoT devices, right? That's major. And again, understanding what's listed on Crunchbase, but that's not so much of the point specifically on Crunchbase. The point is recognizing this from Michael Arrington, because you'll understand the whole thing of what we talked about with Jasmy, especially with Sony Afila, and Sony with Honda. So we kind of been there and done that with Sony Honda, with Afila, especially for 2026. But here's something new, and I thought this was really, really eye-opening. June 19th, just literally the other day, big announcement from Michael Arrington. Again, founder of TechCrunch, Crunchbase, and Arrington Capital. Again, Arrington Capital XRP. Interesting to see this posting because he points out Honda conducts surprise reusable rocket tests, aims for space flight by 2029. Now, this gets kind of crazy, okay? So I decided to get into the weeds of this. Let's pull this up. Brings you over to ground.news article. And what mentions here is interesting. Honda conducts surprise reusable rocket test, aims for spaceflight by 2029. Now, you got to keep in mind, a lot of us, immediately when we think of spaceflight, you might think of, number one, obviously Elon Musk, SpaceX, or you may think of NASA. Heck, you may even think about Jen McCaleb in VAST, right? But what's pointed out here is that literally on the 17th of this month of June, Honda conducted a successful launch and safe landing of a 6.3 meter reusable rocket at its Taiki test facility in northern Japan. Honda began developing this project back in 2019, proposal by younger engineers to apply its automotive technologies to reusable rockets. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your aha moment. Because when we talk about automotive technologies, we already know about, for example, Jasmy when it comes to their ties to things like Toyota. We know about Jasmy and their ties to, obviously, Sony Afila, which is a collaboration of Sony with Honda. The Afila is a electric vehicle that's coming out in 2026. We also understand the significance of 2026, especially when it comes to the goal of 107 million personal data lockers. That's the goal, as pointed out by Hara and also in the white paper, to achieve that monumental goal. And of course, as cited from the original white paper, this whole concept of a $17 valuation, some people say there's no freaking way. I'm just trying to present some material for you that you might not be aware of. The rocket climbed to a height of 271.4 meters, touchdown, and so on. Again, that's not so much of the point. But the total flight lasted 56 seconds, and Honda stated it aims to achieve suborbital space flight by 2029 using developed rocket technologies. But again, tying the whole thing of automotive technologies to those reusable rockets, I think that is a big deal. This is why I bring it to you guys. And also on top of it, Honda plans to continue R&D reusable rockets, contributing to satellite launches. How many times did we talk about low orbiting satellites, especially with IoT? Shout out to Menno Logwar in the space. Shout out to, obviously, Neo X Tricks in the space that cover this numerous times. You're more than welcome to take your own deep dive into it. But again, reflecting growing interest in Japan. Yes, Japan's expanding space industry. Now, I want to share this. Back to Afila for just a brief moment. Because in Car and Driver magazine, they highlight, of course, this. This was showcased in Los Angeles last January. We know that we saw some big pumps happen in January. More focus on the whole thing of the concept of semiconductors, not so much of this. But what I thought was interesting is, again, understanding what's new for 2026. Afila 1 will be the first product from the new brand of reservations, open to buyers, of course, in the state of California. The first deliveries are said to be on track for mid-2026. This has always bothered me as a Jasmy investor. Not bothered me as in like, I'm really worried about, but bother me that why specifically they mention all these particular key targets about 2026. And for me, this is the only thing that I have ever gathered that kind of stacks up or adds up. EV motor, power, performance. I mean, again, you get the idea, but the bottom line is it's not mentioned here. But the infrastructure, there's a lot of IoT infrastructure built into this. And of course, we know about the Sony Honda connection. We know about, for example, Jasmy's connection to Panasonic. Panasonic provides what is referred to as those cell batteries. We know that, for example, with Tesla, you got, for example, Panasonic and particular states that are basically utilizing that technology. So I think they hit the spectrum, not just on Afila, but obviously even on the competitors like Tesla. Now, just real briefly, all right? Some of you guys wonder, for example, how in the world does Janction complement the Jasmy token? And I'll just share this brief thing with you guys because, again, I want to pound home all of this. So I want you guys to just literally see it on the screen. Seeing is believing. Understand the utility and demand. So Jasmy, we know, is the primary currency for Jasmy's data marketplace. Users are paid in Jasmy for sharing IoT device data via personal data lockers. Companies pay in Jasmy. Yes, Jasmy, not Janction, to access this data. Janction's integration expands this ecosystem by rewarding node operators with Jasmy tokens. Think about that. Okay? Creating additional demand for the token. Not additional demand necessarily for Janction, but additional demand for the Jasmy token. A lot of you guys are frustrated stating that this is Jasmy scam and I'm going to have to pay for this Janction token. If you want to, you can. But here's something I want to jump into. JCT token, as in Janction, used for governance and rewards on Janction, designed to complement Jasmy. Again, I'll state again, complement Jasmy, not replace it. For example, holding JCT may entitle users to Jasmy airdrops, and of course, incentivizing participation, both ecosystems, and potentially reducing Jasmy's circulating supply through market buyouts. Now, if anything, I'm going to do a stop share for a brief moment, come back into the frame, because I want to point this out to you guys, and then we'll share the last part. So the way I look at it, Rob, is like this. There's a whole crowd of people, and they do it all the time, and I'm sure you've probably seen this in your own community. This is no knock on you guys, because in my community, there's some people who do this. On one side, you will complain that Jasmy is just an ERC20 token. We know that that's not going to get the job done. So what does Hara go out and do? He recognizes that. He says, yeah, you know what? Guess what? We do have a scalability problem. How do we solve that scalability problem? By going out there and doing a layer 2 solution. So you build on optimism. You come out with a thing called literally Janction, AI times deepen. We understand the importance of that. So now that we have a legitimate layer 2 scaling solution, then people also want to flood the whole thing of, yeah, but now I have to go out and get this particular coin, this particular token, I should say. I don't like that because this one influencer said that's bad juju. But did they ever break it down like this with you guys? The answer is most likely no. And so that'll be the last break we have. And then we'll show you the final connector of how it all comes together. But Rob, I want to get some of your key thoughts because in reality, brother, people will complain about it. You want scalability, but at the same time, you were thinking that you had to buy a new token. Clearly, in the documentation, Grok states that no, it complements the ecosystem, the Jasmy token.
Yeah, I agree. And what you were saying about, because some other content creator said something, and that happens so often in this space, not just with this situation with Jasmy, but a lot of content creators, they'll make an assumption. Like there was an assumption about 2 years ago that I had to battle here on YouTube and kind of debunk, was that Jasmy was going to do a token migration and like Gala did, and it was going to water down the supply, and they were screwing over their, and all of this was just manifested from some YouTuber's imagination. No
I know
one
who
had
that
ever,
is. We don't need to mention who he is, but we all
yeah,
know who that is. So
Yeah, exactly. But the point of it is, yeah, I'm not going to mention them either. The point of it is that happens too often, that these things manifest in the imagination of somebody who runs a YouTube channel, and then they spit it out there, and next thing you know, it's going viral like it's a fact. So you absolutely hit the nail on the head. Two things I wanted to add though was, one, in terms of Janction's ecosystem, I actually was having a conversation with KJ, I think yesterday, about the GPU cloud that they're building, right? And I was wondering if they were planning on using the GPU processing power in Janction to incentivize graphics designers, Web3 gaming projects, AI and AI agent projects to migrate or launch inside of Janction's ecosystem, right? And he came back with an astounding, of course, right? He says they have such big plans, you guys have no idea, to be able to incentivize these. Like the Janction ecosystem, when their mainnet launches, is going to blow up. And having Jasmy be the payment system, like the token inside, the native token inside the ecosystem, that's, everything moves around. It's the oil that greases everything in the ecosystem. And to be incentivizing, the thing is, GPU processing power is hard to come by and it's expensive, right? But the fact that Janction is going to be providing it to these companies that require it, provided that they come and they build inside the Janction ecosystem, is massive. It's going to blow right up, and people are going to go, what the hell just happened?
yeah, I totally agree. He realizes the bigger picture, but people will hear certain things. So it says here on this particular note, community-driven innovation. I want you guys to hear this for a brief moment. Actually, it's this part above it. By leveraging Jasmy's existing partnerships with companies like Panasonic, Janction can facilitate real-world applications such as secure IoT data sharing, further embedding Jasmy tokens in practical use cases. I mean, at the end of the day, this is what people want to see, hear, and so on, because, again, you're getting a different narrative on the importance of Janction, not understanding what it's really trying to do. And that's no knock on anybody, but that's just a common thing that we see in this space. The other part I want to get into is this incubation, right? So for one, this aligns with Jasmy's vision, data sovereignty, again with Janction, fostering community participation. Again, the whole thing about those nodes that we talked about. All right. So the other part I want to jump into is this. And please understand that if you missed this beginning part and it flew past your head, let's start off with here, where we talked about Alchemy Pay. Well, again, I think this will pound home everything, because we established the whole connection of Alchemy Pay, basically to connecting it with this key guy, and I'll just share it again, this gentleman, Noriyuki Matsuda, and especially when we talked about this with Prequin, okay, part of BlackRock, again, DApp's platform. All right, so since we reminded people of that, we're going to now jump into this part. And again, why even get into it? Well, for one, shout out to NeoXTrix again. He says Jasmy Lab, led by Hara-san, has been selected as one of the innovative Japanese tech startups to compete in the KPMG Private Enterprise Global Tech Innovator Competition in Japan 2025. This should be a no-brainer for you guys. And the reason why I say that, and I say that politely, is because, understand this, everybody, KPMG, Hara used to be an accountant for KPMG. And again, he's still going to have connections to who he used to work for years ago. Now, people can say, oh, a lot of people work for KPMG. I get that, but not at the enterprise blockchain level of experience that he has. Here's why this is important. So for one, KPMG, Private Enterprise Global Tech Innovation Competition 2025. Again, private enterprise should be your key takeaway. I'll show you here why in a bit. Clear view of the next wave of technology innovations. Is Jasmy part of that next wave of technology? Is Janction part of that next wave of technology? And just in case you're a non-believer, you're like, they never were highlighted. This is just all speculative. I never heard about this from my favorite influencer. Nothing against your favorite influencer. But KPMG, Private Enterprise Global Tech Innovator Competition in Japan 2025. Yeah, you see Arc Therapies, you see all these other ones, right? Soundwave, but you definitely see Jasmy, plain as day, highlighted there. I think that's profound. I think that's a great find. And again, why does NeoX Tricks share this? Because he realizes that we get a lot of our American only news, or other places in the world, we only get that narrative from what we have at our disposal. He has at his disposal a lot of news that comes from Japan. I think that's major, and I'm glad, of course, he's sharing that. So basically, here's the other thing I want to jump into, and here's the final connector of it all. In this final connector of the deep dive, is Arrington Capital private enterprise? Yes, Arrington Capital is private enterprise. And when you think about it, what does it mention here? And here is your last boil it, mash it, stick it in a stew moment. They have focus on private investment vehicles. The firm provides investment advisory services to privately offered pooled investment vehicles for accredited investors and qualified purchasers. And like it also mentions on the bottom, the firm is a registered investment advisor, but this registration relates to its investment advisory activities, not necessarily implying public trading or ownership. In essence, Arrington Capital is a privately held firm that manages investment funds focused on private digital asset and blockchain-based investments. All right, so what does that mean in layman's terms, everybody? It means that we have alignment. Yes, we have alignment with everything we shared here, with the whole thing at Alchemy Pay. We have alignment of everything we shared here with the whole press release with Ripple. We, of course, have alignment of the key finding with, obviously, Prequin with BlackRock, and some of the other things you see here with Arrington Capital. Again, the whole discovery of this key player from Sourcenext, how it relates to, obviously, key connections with Jasmy. And don't ever forget it, this part, just in case you forgot about it also earlier. What do we see here? Internet of Things devices. And we go further up. The new products that are part of that. And Sourcenext site offers select products such as services in IoT, software, Japan, and of course abroad. To me, this all matches up because that involvement of Sourcenext Corporation with Jasmy. That connection is big, and I think, to me, moving forward, Rob, that is in fact the smoking gun. Glad to bring it to your channel, sir.
Little Bidman was talking about, what'd you say, like a year, 2024, early 2024? Yeah, we honestly have an amazing community of, I can't remember which way to do this, sir. Anyway, we have amazing community, like you said, where we get sources from Japan and stuff like that. That's why it's so important, and that's why Jasmy has such an amazing community, because the researchers, like you said, Little Bidman, NeoX, yourself, Max, IC Amphibian, so many, and such vital information. All right, brother. Well, listen, man, I love it. I love talking to you, brother. Like, I miss you, man. I haven't seen you in a while.
You too, man.
In a while, so we gotta get back at it more often, man.
Absolutely. You keep killing on your channel. Obviously, you're doing something right. I could take some notes myself.